It's time for Physician Family Finances, the show where physician moms and dads like you can get the answers and encouragement you need to turn a good earned income into great life outcomes for tomorrow and today.
Hello, physician moms and dads. I'm Nate Reineke, certified financial planner and primary advisor.
And I'm Ben Utley, certified financial planner and the service team leader here at Physician Family. And speaking of family, Nate, hard to have a family without a mom. Mother's Day
Right.
is coming right up.
Yes. I just asked my 6-year-old who's turning 7 what he wants to get his mom for Mother's Day, and he said something like take her to the park or take her to his favorite place. I said, "Hey, that's not for mom, that's for you." And he started laughing. And I
Take her to
said,
paintball.
you know what mom wants? She wants rest.
Yeah.
I'm like, how do we get her some rest? And he said to make her breakfast in bed, which we've never done actually.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I know they, for whatever reason, it's something we do, but just have never done on Mother's Day.
Dude, you're
And
leaving points on the table.
I know, I'm like, man, good idea. We should do that.
Well, speaking of breakfast in bed, the first time I made my wife breakfast in bed that I can remember, we had gone out on a date, I don't know, a few months before, and I it's like I want to get to know her a little bit better. And I said, "What's your favorite breakfast food?" And she told me about these one that was like impossible to recreate camping, and another one was I can't remember what it was, of course, because I can't remember, right? But the third one, I remembered she said, "I like crepes." I was like,
Mm,
"Crepes? Huh? Those are hard to make." So I found a friend of mine that was a soul pampered chef, and I got a recipe off YouTube, and I went over to her house secretly. She sold me a pan and taught me how to make crepes. And then on Mother's Day, I made three different kinds of crepes with three different fillings, and I don't know, something else, some fruit. And I brought it to her as breakfast in bed with hot coffee. Oh, she was floored. She was floored, absolutely. And
I
then,
believe that story because when we first met, you told me about crepes.
yeah, yeah,
You've been
exactly.
married 20 years by that point.
Yeah, well, I used to make crepes every Sunday for my kids, and then when they'd have friends come over,
Hmm.
my daughters would always ask for crepes, and come to find out, they're really not that hard to make once you figure out the batter.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
yeah, so that's my Mother's Day story. Yeah, but this Mother's Day, we'll probably just go out and get a basket of flowers because she likes hanging baskets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So does my mom. She loves
yeah,
hanging baskets.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of sad that we have to wait till Mother's Day to think about how great our wives are, but
Oh, hold
I
on, hold on, hold on.
yeah.
Take the we out of that. I think about how great my
Yeah.
wife is all
Well,
the time.
I'll take the we out too. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
yeah, she
about it all
makes
the time.
life worth living for me.
That's right. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
just out of town, and and I was like, "So how are the kids?" And apparently they're just like perfect angels while I'm gone.
oh,
Like, what are you doing while I'm gone? She's just like, "I'm just living." Just like,
wow,
yeah, they're great for her when I'm gone.
nice. So. Just a heads up to all you men out there. Don't you dare forget Mother's Day.
That's
Don't
right.
you dare. If you want big points, cook for her. If you want little points, take her out to a meal. By the way, make some reservations because you're not the only guy thinking that,
Yeah.
right? Or pick up some flowers, maybe for the first time in your life. You'd be surprised how many guys don't get their wives flowers. I'm floored. So,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
here's another tip. When she
yeah.
says she doesn't like flowers, don't believe her.
Don't believe it. Yeah,
Don't believe it. Come
yeah.
on. That's
Take that
rookie
as
stuff.
she doesn't like buying herself flowers.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Okay.
On with the show.
Speaking,
All these
yes,
incredible non-Mother's Day listener questions.
yeah. Right. Well, it's funny. The first question I got, and it has nothing to do with Mother's Day, but it's
Oh,
Mother Day. Mother's Day is around the corner, and I think this family's Mother's Day gift is a third child.
oh, well, that's a
So
gift from mom. I don't know if it's a gift
yeah.
to mom.
By the way, here's extra credit points. When it's your first child's birthday, that is actually the anniversary of you and your wife becoming a parent.
Oh,
So I said, "Hey, you're about 7 years into this parenting thing because my son's birthday is in a week."
yeah,
She's like, "Oh," like melted her heart just for a second.
that's cute.
That's, yeah. All right. First question is from a surgeon in Connecticut. We are looking to buy a minivan. Given the recent tax tariffs, should we buy new, used, or lease one?
Mm. You know, Nate, this is car questions, and
Yeah,
for the first 5 to 10 years of my business life as a financial advisor, I fell for car questions.
yeah.
Like I would get engaged in these conversations. I'd tell them like the low cost way, the low total cost of ownership, and nobody ever listened to me. And then I just finally stopped giving car advice altogether.
It took me a couple years too.
Yeah.
I remember the
Yes.
first time I told you, it's not making a big enough difference. And you're like,
No.
yeah, I learned that a long time ago.
Yeah. So here we are giving car advice again. Jeez.
Yeah. Well, um, here's what I can say. Uh, no matter what happens with tariffs, you should buy used, right? I mean, it's, but you also answered this, I think an episode or two ago, like the real impact on tariffs for like, let's say a car for physicians is essentially going to be that maybe you don't buy the newest, latest and greatest car, and now you just, for the same price, you're going to get a slightly used car.
Could
So,
be.
um, answer is used, in my opinion. Doesn't have a whole lot to do with tariffs, but yeah, buy used, buy a couple years old, and buy what you can pay for in cash.
I did the math on leasing one time, and the imputed interest rate on that lease was something on the order of 17%. It was insane.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know what my best car buying advice is?
what's that?
Date your car, marry your mechanic.
Yes,
Find your mechanic first, and then find out what kind of cars they like, because you're gonna take your car to the mechanic, whether it's new or used, and then buy what they tell you to buy. You just say, I need something to haul kids around, and what should I get? And they'll say, oh, whatever kind of car. We love we don't have to fix those a whole lot. We love working on them and blah blah blah. That's what you want. Marry your mechanic, date your car.
here's another great thing about marrying your mechanic.
Uh,
When your kids get old enough to drive, my kids aren't that old, but this is what my parents did to me. They introduced me to their mechanic.
uh-huh.
They're like, get to know him because you're not going to drive a car nice enough where you won't need to know this guy.
Is that marry your body guy, date your car? Because like they need body work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I knew my mechanic. They talked me off the ledge a few times. I'm like, I want this really cool whatever. And they're like, no, buy a Honda.
yeah,
Like every time. So
yeah,
and then I got to know him really well. You learn how to find one for, that isn't like screwing you over.
yeah,
And then you learn to find one that's like, you need this but not that right now. And
yeah.
then as you start to upgrade in car, you actually have a feel for hey, is this worth my time? Like, so maybe now it's actually worth paying the extra amount of money to buy a newer car, but you
Uh,
don't even know. Like, I hear people that only buy new cars, they're terrified of their mechanic. I'm like, I see my mechanic, I drive
uh,
bad cars. I see him once every couple years.
yeah,
It's not a
yeah.
big deal.
Now mechanics are awesome if you get a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
As far as the tariffs thing, though, I mean, yeah, price of cars are gonna go up, and you should
You have a
probably,
chance right now to buy a used car and perhaps sell it for more than you bought it for.
that's right.
Because if we get these tariffs and they stick, then the cost of all cars are going to go up because of
Yeah,
what they call the substitution effect in econ.
that's right.
So, all right.
Next question from a double doc family in Kentucky. All right. My wife, children, and I are moving states and switching jobs. I am thinking we would max out the 401k contributions at my old job because I don't think we will get any match from our employer on the other side until after the end of the year.
Mm,
I do know that my wife has a very good retirement policy on her end, but we are not sure of the details. Is this a good idea? So
interesting. I haven't heard retirement policy. Maybe
I know,
plan. Retirement plan.
plan. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
just what they wrote, but there's not a ton of details here, so I'm just going to say at high level, this is a good idea to max out before you leave.
Yeah.
It makes it administratively more straightforward
Hmm.
because when you're in the middle of two plans, like let's say half the year you're at one 401k and half the year you're at a new job and a new 401k, those 401ks do not communicate and you're kind of at risk of over contributing,
Yep.
which gives you a headache, come tax time and you're breaking some rules. So, if it's close and I'll go in a minute, I'll tell you what I mean by if it's close, then you should just max one side out. Like before
Hmm.
you leave, you max it out. Because when you get to the new 401k, um, usually there's a waiting period before you can contribute or get the benefit of contributing, like a match. But let's just say there was a great benefit at the new job and a not so good benefit at the old one. It is possible to do both and split the contributions. It's just a little time consuming and complicated to do the math.
Yeah, takes
So
a little know-how, but it's not impossible.
it's not impossible. It's not too bad. Usually if the matches are roughly the same, we'll just say max it out the first job.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The thing to know here is that the 401k contribution limit applies whether you have one employer 401k or 17 employer 401ks. It's the same limit combined across all of them. And
that's
if you
right.
go beyond that, you're going to have taxes and penalties.
Yeah. Okay.
Taxes and penalties is like a song, you know. I think I could come up with a whole song around taxes and penalties.
That would probably be pretty boring.
Yeah, and speaking of retirement stuff, on one of the shows recently, I promised that I would deliver a thing called "Look Before You Leap" about it's a retirement checklist. Well, I spoke out of turn. I did a little willy-nilly. I do have Look Before You Leap, but it's not about retirement. So I am actively working on a pre-retirement checklist. And when it is done, I will offer it again. So those of you that wrote in diligently and asked for it, I appreciate your interest. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I will deliver on that at some point in the near future. I'm actively writing.
Nice. Okay. Next question is from a hospitalist in Utah. We plan to retire in about 15 years when we are 60. We bought a new home in 2023 and are considering refinancing. With the high interest rates, should we refinance to a 15-year loan to pay off the mortgage faster?
That's about 15 years out from retirement, 15-year note.
Yep,
For my money, that's a yeah.
that's just a yes. Yeah, there's really
Yep.
nothing more to think about. Now, if you're further out from retirement, there's some flexibility you might need, but you don't have flexibility. You're gonna retire at 60, you gotta pay this thing off by 60 anyways. Might as well take a lower rate.
Yeah. If we get a nice fat recession, and
Hmm.
if the Federal Reserve is still independent, and if they fight the recession by lowering interest rates, then people may get another shot at refinancing. Because
Hmm.
typically the mortgage rates are kind of based on closely on the 10-year Treasury. Unfortunately, the Fed doesn't control the 10-year rate, as we've all realized. So there's a chance that rates could go down, and you might get another shot at refi. But I'd refinance now in that 15-year. I think that's a really good move because we like to see people pay off those mortgages before they retire.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
easy.
That
Wham, slam
was.
dunk. Yeah,
Yeah. Usually it's kind of hard, but
yeah,
no.
that's okay.
All right. Here's an interesting question, Ben. So we have some diligent listeners, and
Okay.
they are testing the strength of some advice that we've given in the
Is
past.
this Stump the Chump? Is that what this is going to be?
I think it is. It's a good
You
one
threw me
though.
the softball, and now you're going to throw me, a hardball. Okay,
I
fine.
saved it for last. All right. Neurosurgeon in Maryland. I've heard Ben on a few occasions now emphatically recommend traditional 403b contributions for doctors instead of Roth 403b contributions. The reasoning is that doctors are in a high tax bracket during work, and presumably they will be in a lower tax bracket during retirement. That's sound advice for sure. However, are there exceptions to this rule? Would you still recommend a traditional pre-tax 403b contribution even if the physician already has a large 403b balance? I'm in my mid-50s, will continue to work till late 60s. Total retirement accounts, including my wife's, which is 403b, 457 SEP accounts, currently total 6.5 million. Would it make sense to pay taxes now at a 37% federal income tax bracket plus 5% state, so I avoid significant RMDs and being in the highest tax bracket indefinitely once RMDs start? Uh, Plan to leave money to kids, not charity. In other words, are there exceptions to the notion that doctors should always choose traditional pre-tax 403b or 401k contributions?
I think yes, but before I go there, I
Hmm.
want to defend emphatically.
Yes.
Okay. So for every hyper diligent listener that we have like this guy, and my hat
Hmm.
is off to you for paying that level of attention to your future tax bill. For every guy like that, there's going to be 100 people out there that are not going to get this, and they're going to
Yeah,
waste a whole bunch of tax money, right?
that's right.
So,
Yeah.
it's
Let me actually point out another thing that's unique about this listener.
mhm,
403B, 457, and SEP,
yeah,
all pre-tax, and it sounds like that's where most of the money is going. That's a pretty unique uh, account structure.
hmm
That's a lot of money going in pre-tax that you don't see very often. Imagine the average doc that got a 403B, a backdoor Roth, and a taxable account.
hmm
It's spread out pretty similarly, and you're not going to get $6.5 million in those accounts unless you have a giant taxable account,
yeah.
and
So
therefore you'll have tax diversification.
in this particular case, though, I think I'm going to stand pat on the advice of contribute to your traditional 403b. And here's why. All right. So if you're a neurosurgeon and you got that kind of balance, you didn't just stumble into that. And if your spouse is employed too, I'm guessing that you're in the top marginal tax bracket. Okay.
Hmm.
And if you're in the top marginal tax bracket now, and you just happen to be in the top marginal tax bracket in retirement, there's no difference between Roth and non-Roth, right? It has to, the whole decision has to do with the difference between the tax rate that you have now and the tax rate that you'll have in the future. Okay, so there's a couple caveats here. One is our illustrious president has promised to raise taxes on those who make more than $1 million to 40%. So there's some chance that the top rate could go up, but I'm thinking that in these distributions, they're probably not going to touch that. They're probably not going to, because I mean, $6.5 million over 6.5 years, yeah, you might exceed a million. But my thinking on this is that they probably will not be in that 40% bracket, right? So if they're in the 37 now and they're in the 37 in retirement, it's all the same, no big difference. Now, this person is in Maryland, and I looked up this morning what the tax rate in Maryland is. It's like 5.75%. Okay, so there's a chance that they could move out of Maryland. Like if they move to Texas or Florida or Alaska or Washington, states that don't have an income tax, then they're not going to pay that 5.75% on the withdrawals. So there's a chance that they could use geographic arbitrage and be in a lower tax bracket. So that's a thought. And then I guess, provided that this plan allows for in-plan Roth conversions, they still have the option to convert. So they can contribute to the pre-tax, and then they could later have the option to convert to the 403, see the Roth portion of the 403b. But if you just contribute to the Roth 403b, you can't back that out. So this is the whole salt in the soup thing. Put the salt in the soup, you can't take it back out. Salt the soup slowly and taste it in between. So I'm thinking that is the issue. Now there is one more case. And it is this. We only think about income taxes most of the time when we talk about this. And if there's an inheritance involved, or there may be estate tax. In fact, I looked it up, and Maryland does have an estate tax, and they have an inheritance tax, which doesn't apply in families, but if you basically move money to someone outside the family, then there's an inheritance tax that is not insubstantial. So one of the things that you might want to do, and I've actually seen some of our older clients do this, they'll do Roth conversions, but it's not to save taxes during their lives. It is because in your traditional 403b, all that money is taxable. And you could imagine like parsing that into two buckets. It's the money that's going to be left over after you pay taxes on it, and there's the tax money that's in there. It's kind of all glommed up in one pile. But when the government applies an estate tax, they apply it to the whole balance, which means you could be taxed twice on the money that's in a traditional IRA or a traditional 403b. So one way to lower your estate tax bill is to convert your IRA or your 403b right now and pay the taxes, which gets the taxes out of the estate, and that lowers the estate taxes. That's something that is super nuanced. It doesn't apply to everybody because we have a huge federal estate tax deduction. And some states have a large federal estate tax deduction like Maryland does. But here in Oregon, the estate tax deduction is $1 million. And there are ways around that as well. I've actually used that. So as we're thinking about taxes, we're not just thinking about income taxes federally, we're thinking about federal, state, as well as a state and perhaps inheritance taxes.
Hmm.
That was a lot.
It was a lot. Um, can I push back on something, or really just I have a feeling that listeners actually have a question about something you said.
Okay.
Um, when you are saying, and you've said this on a few episodes, so when you say there is no difference whether or not you're paying 37% now, and if you're paying 37% now and 37% later,
Hmm.
tell me why there's no difference between paying the 37, getting it in a Roth now,
Hmm.
and then avoiding it later. Because I think what this question is essentially saying is, if I pay the taxes now, then it can grow tax free, and then you pull it
Yeah.
out without paying 37%. But what do you mean by there's no difference?
Well, so if you're expecting your income tax rate on contribution to be the same as your income tax rate on distribution, then it doesn't really matter whether you do Roth or regular. However, if you choose Roth, you can't go back. If you
Hmm.
choose traditional, you can always convert to Roth. So you leave that option open, and in planning, you want your options.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, I guess there might be some case where it makes sense to contribute to Roth now that I cannot conceive of because, there's nothing more unique than someone's tax bill, right?
Yeah.
Giving tax advice is notoriously difficult to give it with precision without actually using software because our code is so darn complicated. Um, but we have some software that we use with retired or retiring people that actually takes all this into consideration.
That's
It
right.
takes the tax brackets, the distributions, need for income, with the source of the taxes to be paid. Like if the taxes are going to be paid out of a taxable account that is subject to capital gains, even includes the capital gains. So we
Hmm.
got this wired tight for someone who's actually interested in retirement distributions. But in the absence of that, it's hard to wave your hands and do rule of thumb, except to say that in in all the cases that I've seen,
Hmm.
uh, traditional contributions are better than Roth. Yeah,
Yeah, this was unique, but I would agree. And I've probably written 200 retirement plans, and I
yeah.
have not seen a situation where they should be contributing to their Roth 401k. But this is unique. He has a lot of money in pre-tax accounts. I mean, another idea
Hmm.
is if you want a little tax diversification, like start. I didn't see any mention of backdoor Roth here. I know it's not a ton, 7,000
Yeah.
bucks. I got maybe more if he's in his mid 50s.
But yeah,
But put some money in a taxable
I'd be
account.
willing to bet there's money socked away in a backdoor Roth, but it's not.
There has to be, right? You just didn't
Yeah, but
mention it.
that's a whole different story. I mean, that's a slam dunk. You should do
Yeah, of
that.
course.
And this guy's astute enough that he's probably not going to ask about that because it's not relevant. But I
No,
think
I
for the
just
rest of our
mean,
listeners, yeah, this backdoor Roth, you should be doing that as well.
what I mean by that is I think a little bit of what he's getting at is tax diversification, and the
Hmm.
only accounts listed are all pre-tax. So, I mean, another point is that I've never written a plan where someone shouldn't use some backdoor Roths in a taxable account, really. But
Yeah,
yeah, get
I
some
haven't
money in
seen a
other
strong
accounts.
case for tax diversification. Like my thinking on this is you pay the least taxes you can over the course of your lifetime. If you
Hmm.
minimize your overall lifetime tax burden with smart moves, which are kind of hard to see, then minimum taxes is minimum taxes. It doesn't matter if it's diversified or not. And we think about diversification as a good thing, which it is if you're investing in individual stocks or different markets, right? Because some of those things could blow up. They could literally go bankrupt. But the US tax code is the last thing that will ever go bankrupt, right? They're
Yeah,
going to be there with their hand out. So in terms of diversification, I don't think that matters. I think tax diversification is just a wild goose chase. I think, minimizing overall lifetime income tax impact, honestly, it's hard, it's complicated, and most people don't value it. They value tax breaks that they get right now rather than reducing taxes over the next 10 or 20 years. We know how to do it. We can
yeah,
certainly do that. Um, yeah, but most people are not asking for that. In fact, the thing that steams me is I'll tell a client, hey, let's set up a backdoor Roth IRA. Let's do this. They go to their CPA and the CPA says, you can't do that. you can't contribute to a traditional IRA. And I'm like, oh, yes, you can. You just can't deduct it. And so they don't value it because it's not a deduction they can take this year on your tax
Hmm.
return.
Yeah.
It's short-term thinking, a long-term world.
Yeah. I think that there is a case for it, but not just for its own sake. I think it's nice to have because most physicians are forced into tax diversification.
Yeah.
They have pre-tax money, they have post-tax money, and they have taxable account money. And there isn't a case that we can point to because it hasn't happened yet. But if you don't, if you're worried about what taxes will be in 30 years, it's nice to have it spread across all three buckets.
I
But it's
wouldn't pay extra taxes now for the hope
no,
of saving taxes later.
that's right. I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and for those of you that are waving the red flag saying income taxes could go up, they could go up, but they could also go down. I follow the Tax Foundation,
Mm,
and when it comes to tax time where we start to play with the tax code, the thing that they recommend is that we lower the rate and broaden the base, which is to say we tax more people at a lower rate. That seems to be what they recommend. I don't know exactly why, maybe it's fairer, but tax wonks who think about this, that's what they think. They don't think
mhm.
higher rates, they think lower rates and more people paying taxes.
All right.
Okay, is that it?
That's
Is that
it.
that's the end of our list. Woo,
Yeah.
man. Well, Maryland surgeon, thank you so much, or Maryland neurosurgeon, sorry. Thanks so much for thanks for playing Stump the Jump today.
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Uh,
actually answered that,
well,
stumpy
it's
or
a,
not, but
but when I was preparing for it, the thought I had in my head was, this is a tough. I totally understand where he's coming from. Um, this is a math problem, and with
yeah,
half the inputs, you're sort of guessing.
yeah, that's right.
So, but hey,
Yeah.
I understand where he's coming from.
And speaking of preparing, Nate, here we
Yes.
go. Here's the plug, right?
Okay.
If you're preparing for a good financial future and you would like to minimize your lifetime taxes or at least have a shot at it, maybe we're a match for you. So you can go to physicianfamily.com, click the Get Started button, take a little quiz to see if we might be a match. And if you're not ready for that, you can do like this guy just did and send us an awesome freaking question to podcast@physicianfamily.com. In the meantime, make sure that you pick up something for your wife because she works harder than you do. We know this, right? Appreciate her on Mother's Day. In the meantime, remember, you're not just making a living, you're making a life.
Are you ready to turn worries about taxes and investing into all the money you need for college and retirement? It's time to make a plan and get on track. To find out if we're a match, visit physicianfamily.com and click Get Started. Or you can ask a question of your own by emailing podcast@physicianfamily.com. See marketing disclosure at physicianfamily.com/disclosures.